Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen. I'm reporting live from my little cabin in the woods, Murphy's Law. And of course, I've got my standee for Shah Rukh Khan behind me. And you know, he's going to be the lion in this up and coming film. But today we have a guest that is one of our authors, Anjani Gattani and Anju. And she just ran in the door here today. So as we were about to get on today, we were talking about right now in India, there's and lots of other places in the world, they're celebrating Holi. Tell us about that. Tell us about that.
So Holi is a festival that comes up every spring. It follows the lunar calendar. The date kind of changes, but it's usually around the end of March, sort of April, around that time frame. And it's to celebrate many different facets. Traditionally for the farmers, it's like the next season that kicks in, but on the spiritual side, it's good over evil. The victory of Holika, who burned all the evil in this huge fire, which is why in India, a lot of times on the actual Holi day itself, you see these huge stakes of fire which are lit up, and people, start the celebration with that. Then the next day of Holi is the spreading of color, cheer, happiness, and
I lost you. Okay, I'm going to wait to see if she gets back on. Wait a minute. Where did she go? Hang on, everybody. I'm waiting for her to come on board today. After we talk about a little bit about the celebration, we're going to be discussing a interview I watched shortly after discovering Shah Rukh Khan in the movie Om Shanti Om. It was called The Next Guest, and it was a interview with David Letterman, had gone to India and had interviewed Shah Rukh Khan. And this was the first she's emailing me, she's trying to get back on. This was the first I'd really heard about this actor, and I was fascinated. So I couldn't believe that David Letterman was interviewing this guy I'd never heard of, and I watched it. And this is all just the beginning. 2 years ago during COVID, I discovered all this. So it's been fascinating to me. I'm kind of sad now that I know who he is, because when I first saw him, I thought I'd made such a unique discovery of a gem in this world, and come to find out he has 44 million followers around the world, not just in India, but in all the different places that he has set his films, in Switzerland, in England, in Thailand. He has been everywhere doing, I think he's made over 80 films, started out in India television, which really just got its start in like the 80s and 90s. And he became a star right from the very beginning. It's an interesting and fascinating story. So hopefully Angie will be able to get it right back on. But while she's waiting, some of the things that I've read about him, there's several books out. There's SRK, which is a big picture book on Shah Rukh Khan that I just recently found. It's a tome of a book, but it's got lots and lots of interviews about him. If you've never heard of this actor, I highly recommend that you watch it, because come to find out, a lot of American actors are big fans of, and all around the world are also big fans of Shah Rukh Khan. I just saw him interviewed with Brad Pitt. I've seen him with Lady Gaga. I know that Hugh Jackman adores him and considers him, the greatest actor ever. And I even got to see them both dance together. But this actor, Shah Rukh Khan, is so multifaceted. Every role that he takes on, he becomes that character and he makes it his own. And he started out taking every movie that came along that nobody else wanted. And he said, if you give me a movie, I will make my role unforgettable. And believe me, he does. I started with Om Shanti Om, and then I watched this interview, and then from there I watched Devdas. And Devdas is a movie that's with another star that I've become really fond of. This is the film. I actually ordered it because I've watched it so many times on Netflix. I thought I'm just going to go ahead and order this film so I can watch it all the time. And we'll see, she's coming back on, but it's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And it's got the most incredible cinematography, the most incredible dance sequences and costumes that I've seen in any film ever. I'm talking about the film Devdas because that was the third film I watched of Shah Rukh Khan, and it kind of blew me away. I've watched it, I think now 3 or 4 times, and I can't hardly bear to watch it now because I cry so hard at the end. It's the saddest movie, but it's the most beautiful movie at the same time. And I just loved everything about it. I finally broke down and ordered a copy of the movie. But where we're talking about Holi and the festival, and I found the powders that they use for the festival. And can you tell me how they use these powders? Aren't they beautiful?
They're gorgeous. Yes, you get them in packets, and you can dry smear people with them, usually on their faces, their hair, and then of course sometimes you mix it with water, and then you can a lot of times in India people will just dump bucketfuls on others, just a whole bucketful, fill water balloons and throw them at other people. Syringes, you get these huge syringes.
Like
You
water
suck
guns? Like water
like
guns
water
that we have?
guns. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And
So how
they
many times have you participated in that?
so after I got married, we played, my husband and I played Holi with his friends in Bombay, at least for a good few years. And you came back a complete mess, of course, because we would play outdoors. The colors would stay on our skins for at least a good 2 to 3 weeks. Even though you scrub it off, it doesn't come off. It all depends on what people have been using on you. So some of them are not so strong and they wash off after a soap and a rinse. And some of them kind of stay on for a good 2 to 3 weeks. So you have highlights in your hair, bright red,
Well,
pink.
I'm not going to try to get it on my hair, but I am going to put my hand in all the colors and I'm going to do like that's what they do. I've been wanting to do this since I bought this stuff, and I just think it's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. But I'm a big kid at heart. I really like to play, and I've got these powders because I also thought I was going to figure out a way to incorporate them because they're so intense pigments, and I don't know if they're made out of chalk or what they're made out of, but they kind of remind me of what the tempera paint that you use for egg tempera. So I'm gonna, now that I've got them all open, I'm gonna experiment with them on some canvases. But look, it just wiped off my hands.
Yeah.
So, oh, I've got to get a little bit more pink on here.
Just a little.
My favorite. And I've got this white dress my friend gave me from, it probably came from India, but we bought these dresses in Greece. And she said, I'm never going to wear this thing. And so she gave it to me. And I said, it's perfect. And I threw around one of my, colorful scarves in the colors of the things. But this is so much fun. That is my dream, is to go for the Festival of Lights. I would love to be there for Holi. And how many other festivals are there?
There are so many, you couldn't even count them because India itself is spread into different states. Each state has its own different types of specialized beliefs, festivals. They're all, based on their culture, their background. And so, Diwali, for example, is very big for people from the north of India. Another festival is bigger for people from the south of India. We all celebrate it, but in different ways. So just like there are numerous languages across the country, there are numerous festivals. There's no beginning, there's no end. And, that's the beauty of it, that everybody participates and partakes in everybody else's celebration.
See, I really love that, the culture and the way, and people are just, no matter what dire circumstances they come from, or, how opulent, they all seem to be, celebrating and happy. And I know it's not. I've read your book, and I know that, but there's something about watching these films that take me away from whatever I'm dealing with now. And I think that's why I fell so much in love with it, because for the past 2 years, I've lived in my little cabin in the woods, and I rarely go out unless it's doctor or groceries, or I have to mail a painting. I can count on my hands how many times I've been out the past 2 years, but they're starting to get out a little bit, but now they're talking again about how it's coming back. But did
Right.
you get a chance to watch the David Letterman interview with Shah Rukh Khan?
I've seen it twice.
I have too.
I've
And
seen it.
it's what I found most fascinating is, I don't know Shah Rukh Khan at all. If you go by his movies, you're not going to get a true, you know, representation of who he really is. But in this interview, his own personality, I think, came out quite a bit. And I loved how he was cooking with Dave, and they were making that chicken, his favorite chicken dish. And of course, David Letterman pretends he cuts himself. And I thought it was priceless, because Shah Rukh Khan in the show goes, listen, I'm an actor. That was terrible. I
That was
don't,
terrible.
I just thought it was so funny. And then we got to, meet his wife, Gari, and she's fascinating in her own self, because she's, has this background in fashion, interior decorating, and she's opened like an Airbnb, and she's got all these things going on with a store and decorating homes. And I've always loved to decorate. So that's kind of fascinating. And then they have these three beautiful children, which, I'm sure he worked so hard to try to protect them, but I can't even imagine how hard it would be to be under the most famous actor in the world, under that, and how you can't even leave your house to go to a movie or whatever. There's a real price to pay for fame and, stardom. And Shah Rukh Khan loves it, but it's obvious that his wife is not so. But my kids are the same way. I don't know how your grown children are, but my daughters, they go, this is your thing, Mom. We did it with you for a while, but we've got our own things now. And that they support me, but they don't want a part of this. They
Right.
just go, you do too many crazy things. They love me and support me that way, but I'm you know, just a smidgen here in the United States. This man is international star. So it was very enlightening. What was your favorite part about the documentary or the interview?
Really watching him on screen as a human being.
He's just very unassuming, very quiet,
Very quiet, very grounded, very down to earth.
but very witty.
Very down to earth, very careful in terms of, what he's thinking and what he's saying. He doesn't just say the first thing that comes to mind. And you can see he's somebody who obviously has a lot of patience, doesn't lose his temper very quickly from what we saw at least. But with a lot of the film stars in India, they're given the status of gods. They're treated that
They
way.
are. They
And
really are.
so
And
to be able to see someone like Shah Rukh Khan, who is so human, he's almost touchable. He's like your person, your friend next door kind of thing, or the businessman next door who but you don't quite know, but he's there. He's approachable. That's the first time you really get to feel that just watching the documentary.
I have so many friends that know how crazy I am about his films and, um, his interviews and everything. They go, well, so when are you going to get to meet him? I go, I'm not going to get to meet him. I mean, there's 44 million people that are his fans. And every time at his home, he goes out on the balcony, tens of thousands of people show up just so they can get a selfie of him in the background. I said, you guys, this isn't really even like the United States. I've met a lot of really famous people and have my pictures made with them, but it's true. In Bollywood, if you become like a hero, you become like a god. And I don't know how anybody would actually get to him. And that's why I enjoyed, I just finished reading Karen Johar. You should read that book. I just
Mhm.
finished reading his book about how he got started. You know, his father had the film company and how he started, you know, working, and he worked on a film with Shah Rukh Khan. And he said, you know, you're really good at writing. Why don't you direct my next film? And I'm just going, the generosity of him taking this younger man under his wing. And he said, it's still kind of, and now look at him. The guy is like as big a star in a lot of ways as Shah Rukh Khan, but he always goes back to tell, you know, I've always said, don't forget who brought you to the party.
Yeah.
Because I remember every kindness, I remember every slight.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's not that I want to do anything to anybody who might slight me, but people that are kind to me and do like all that you sent me all those things from India. It was just like the greatest day of my life because I was so in love with all this stuff. And now everybody's sending me all kinds of wonderful things, and I'm just so appreciative of it. And I think to myself, you know, someday I'm going to have to pay all these people back in some form or fashion. So for me, it's spreading the love of your books. And I was really hoping that Shah Rukh Khan, he's read a couple of times in interviews that he was working on a book. And he
Mm.
read the part about his parents. And then I read the interview that was done with him in the big coffee table book about him. It wasn't exactly like what he tells.
Mm.
So I know there's different sides to every story, but you know, he's a storyteller, and he's taken and I'm a little bit that way too. The more you tell a story, the more I wouldn't say the word is embellish, but you know what people people like in a story, so you tend to hone in on that. But I really want to read his book, but I kind of know why he's not finishing it yet. Because when you write your story down, it kind of in some ways feels like the end of something. So, and I don't think he's anywhere near ending his film career or anything, because I keep seeing every day there, this, is it pronounced Pathan?
Baton.
Pathan? I
Baton.
see, I see that, and now he's got two more that he's showing, and he's going to be with Salman Khan, and he's going to be with this John Abraham, and all these different wonderful stars. And I just think the guy must never sleep
That's what he
because
said. He doesn't sleep more than 5 or 6 hours a night, and he's always thinking or doing something. So he's very restless. And, you know, I guess it's just his personality and who he is.
I have a little bit of that myself, because I cannot go to bed before 11 or 12, or I'll be up at, I always wake up at 3:33. I'll be up 3:33, and then I'll go in and start watching a movie or documentary or something. And the next thing I know, it's 6, and it's really the start of my day. And then I'm tired all day. So I'm really trying to get that juggled out, because this has been going on for years. This hasn't been anything new. It's been pretty much my whole adult lifestyle. So some people just don't need as much sleep as others. In
Some
fact,
don't.
when I go to, you know, I'm going to a lot of doctors right now because I'm trying to get this diabetes in check. And they said, you have so much energy. You don't seem like you are unwell. And I go, I don't feel unwell. You just keep telling me I'm unwell. He goes, well, your blood sugar is shooting up to 300. And I go, I can't tell the difference. He goes, I think it was the surgeon I was talking to. He said, I think it's because you've had this going on for so long. You're normal. And I do think it, and he's a coffee drinker, I'm a coffee drinker. And right now I'm
That
not.
reminds me, I have to get my coffee. Can I go grab it?
Yeah, go grab it. I'm drinking some chai
Okay.
tea.
All
So
right.
you go get your coffee because I'm a big coffee drinker. But I just think the intensity, for all of you who've never seen these holy powders, I found them on Amazon and they're just the most intense. I just want to put them in little jars and just look at, I've never seen colors other than tempera that you use for egg tempera painting that are this intense. So I'm going to be experimenting. So I dumped them out. I'm going to try them out. They have a chalky feel to it, but I just the colors are so, and that's the way the clothes are of India. I love, you know, I would never wear white ever except for Holi. I noticed that whenever they show these in movies, they always put on white clothes because they get soaked and they get all dirty and everything. And I thought, well, this will be my official Holi dress, and threw on a scarf because they usually, but I don't know how, I can't figure out. They always show that Anushka Sharma always just drapes these scarves around her neck and they stay. How do they keep them back on the back of their shoulders? I had to pin mine because they just fall down all the time. And the next thing I'm dragging it on the ground. How do they keep those scarves pulled back? You see, I have it kind of draped, you know, like this. But how do they keep it back?
I have to use safety pins. So whenever I wear them.
Okay, well, I feel better because I had to safety pin them and I should have put them back a little further because it still keeps falling forward. But I practice, they have on YouTube, it shows you how to put on a sari. And I practice and practice. And I always kind of make it my own and get lots of safety pins because I'm always so worried that they'll fall off, you know? And you know, I love, you know, you had those under blouses made for me. I'm going to be wearing them probably for right now. It's too hot for me. I try to wear everything cool because it's like back in the 70s today. But I don't know. I'm going to have to really get used to the temperature over there because how do they keep from not, I mean, what's the average temperature in India?
If you're in Bombay, degrees Celsius, you're usually in the 30s, which
so is what is that?
That's usually like ×2 plus, yeah, ×2 plus 30, I think so. Because we're in Fahrenheit here, so it's usually about 30 Celsius, so usually 70, 80 Fahrenheit.
Oh, that's not bad. I was thinking it was like 90, 100.
It does go up there. It does go up to that temperature.
If you do have a lot of humidity too, right?
Yes, Bombay is very humid. Jaipur, which is in the northern desert area where my parents live and where they're from, the temperatures really go up to the 90s and 100s in the summer, Fahrenheit.
I would rather go there than Mumbai because to me, that Paheli, that movie with the little puppets, and where they go out in the desert and you know they meet that's the villages and things like that are more interesting to me. Of course, you want to go to a city or two.
So that's all of Rajasthan, which is the northern desert region. That's where I'm originally from. That part.
What are the temperatures like up there?
You're looking at 90, 100s in the summer, Fahrenheit.
Oh my goodness.
And it's really, really, really hot. And it's a dry, arid hot. It's not moist. It's not humid. It's a dry.
Well, that's a lot better because it doesn't, I've been camping in the desert out in California where it got that hot, but it never seemed that hot because it was so dry. It's so humid here that even when it gets like 70s, it starts getting I can't handle it. So I'm going to be really working hard this summer on getting some weight off so that when I go there, I won't just die. Lovelace Cook, who was, you know, has been coming on board on, I've been watching her Bollywood books. She said it was miserable for her. And I said, you know, I know it's going to be extremely hot, but I just have to see it in person. I want to go to a real Bollywood movie in a theater. Well, we'll have to wait till the world opens up because I don't even think the theaters are open, are they?
Not yet, no. There's still a lot of issues there.
Yeah, and I want to see, I want to sit amongst the Indian people and see how they experience the movies. Because when I'm at home, I just love them. But they get up and dance. I just, there's just so many. I want to ride the little, what are they called? The little taxi. ta-
Oh, the autos, that's what they call them.
They call
Auto,
them autos.
auto rickshaws, yeah.
Yeah, those are hilarious to me because they're just like a scooter with a hood, a two-seater scooter with a hood. And there's just so many things that I want to do that are not anything to, of course, we all went to see the Taj Mahal and you want to see the Pink Palace, you want to see the iconic temples, but it's the villages that most interest me and the people and how they really live and what they cook
Mhm.
and the street food that fascinates me. I've watched so many documentaries now on traveling through India by motorcycle. Oh my gosh, these two guys from Germany went all the way from Germany down to India. They took ferries and everything and by motorcycle, and they went through all the Himalayas. And I was just going, some of the things they did was so dangerous. I was just like, there's no way. But I watched the Joanne Lumley's travels through India. She had a 3-part series, and she was kind of like me. She said, I found, and she's got the most beautiful smile you've ever seen and blonde hair. She said, I found that if you smile, she goes, you make friends wherever you go. But if you are scowling or something, so she goes, I just would smile everywhere. And my gosh, she's been all over the world now on these travels. But my favorite ones were when she went through India, and she went through a private family home that had mosaic murals in it that was just incredible. It was incredible. And then it had all these courtyards up on top with these vistas. And I don't think it's far from where they have one of the tiger reserves, but it's fascinating. And when you were up visiting where you're from, you went to Mumbai, but you went up to, you pronounce it Jaipur?
Jaipur.
Jaipur. What did you do while you were up there?
It was, there was a lot of little bits and pieces with family. We have a lot of family there. So meeting up with everybody, visiting, and meeting up with relatives who we haven't met in a while. And everybody, Jaipur has changed a lot now from what it used to be. So it's just changed. It's like the next best thing to Mumbai, if not better, because all the top-notch fashion designers have their boutiques now all along Jaipur.
Really? I'm kind of sad because I really wanted to go and see more of the vendor, the families that are selling their wares and different.
They're all there too.
They're there.
All there. Oh yeah, it's just it's a very mixed, a very strong mix of, the economic diversity in India, no matter where you go, always stands out. Rich versus poor, middle class versus lower middle class, and everybody kind of juggles for their space. So you see that no matter how much more developed a situation or a location becomes, there's always going to be that diversity in economic differences.
Well, I know I'm going to take an empty suitcase because trying to find India music and India films or posters here is like hard. I just happened across this on eBay, and I haven't even watched it yet. But I thought they're hard to find. They're hard to find, but and there's a lot of movies that we can't see here. You just can't see. But David Letterman gave him the highest compliment. He said, you're probably, and I'm not I'm paraphrasing it here, but he said, you're probably one of the most incredible people I've ever met. He goes, this has really been just a wonderful honor. And it was, the David Letterman that I remember from the talk show wasn't like that at all. He was very, very, he didn't used to be so um, putting people in the best light, but he obviously very much liked Shah Rukh Khan, and he thought it was funny. And poor Shah Rukh was trying to teach him how to dance, and that, that was a disaster.
But that goes back to something that Shah Rukh Khan said himself in the documentary, where he said, you know, if people only love me for my acting and singing and dancing, then, you know, the likes and dislikes are all based on his performance. But people genuinely love him for who he is as a person.
That's everything. I've watched every interview I could find. I've listened to every talk show, and he's been on a wide variety of both British. I saw one not too long ago. I want to. He was winning an award, and he had an interviewer who was mean. I mean, she was the meanest thing I've ever seen. He never even broke a sweat.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, you know, you're very wealthy. You should do more for your people. And he goes, I should. And she didn't have anything to come back with him. And he goes, I agree. He goes, I'm just so busy making movies. And
Yeah.
I think it's unfair that somebody that's worked as hard as him his entire life, that he can't enjoy his own success. You know what I'm saying? I saw a post today. He had shared something, and somebody went on there and said, listen, my father is not going to make it. He's got to have surgery. Could you please pay for my dad's surgery? And I thought, how many times does that and you know, how heartbreaking would that be? Because if you help one,
You help all.
you know, it's
Who do you say no to?
yeah. And so it's hard to say no, but I think what he does, his humanitarian efforts with the Mir Foundation, I think he does a lot. And I think everybody should let him have. I don't know if you remember how crazy it got for Michael Jackson there for a while, but it got so bad, you know, and it's hard. He tried to disguise himself, but Shah Rukh Khan says, I don't really do that. And he says, well, is there any place you can go in the world where they don't know you? And I want to say, oh, you could come to East Texas. They wouldn't know who you were. They would not know who he was. And I would just love to see that, you know, I would just love to see him come to, now he went to Houston, because that's a huge Indian community, or Dallas also. Yeah. But if he came to rural East Texas or Kansas, where I'm from, they just think, where's that guy from? You know what? He doesn't look like he's from around here, but they would never know. But I have a feeling that I'm not the only one that discovered him 2 years ago. I think America's starting to discover him, because
I hope so.
I put a post up the other day and I said he had 44 million followers, and I said, yeah, one of them, and I'm an American in East Texas. And somebody laughed about that, but it's true. I think that, you know, here I live in this little bitty place in the world, but with the internet now, we're learning who everybody is. Now, what was your first, when did you first discover Shah Rukh Khan? When did he come into your view? And why did you, you know, I know you admire him as much as I do. So how did that come about?
I've been watching Indian movies for as long as I can remember. Since I was a little kid, you know, mom would bring home the DVDs and she'd pop them in. And so for a lot of Indian families at that time, growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, really, especially for women who were homebound, who didn't really have careers, movies was the escape. It was a form of storytelling. So when you talk about song and dance and all that, it really is a form of escape from your everyday life. So I used to watch all these films, you know, with Amitabh Bachchan and Rishi Kapoor and Shashi Kapoor and all these top-notch actors and actresses from my mom's time. But the storytelling was very, very different, of course. It was very patriarchal. Women had very submissive roles, and they were always expected to behave and act in certain ways, and family first. And of course, you know, a lot of the love between a man and woman, it was always expressed with two flowers, which is what Shah Rukh Khan talks about, but literally two flowers or, you know, the wilderness and the
Or
field.
it rains. It rains
Right.
a lot, you know, when they're really in love when they rain, it rains. And here, if it starts raining, everybody runs for shelter. No, not in India. They just revel in it. It's like they love water. It's
So that's what I learned, that because they're not able to be so explicit on screen, they use the surroundings to convey their meaning, the deeper meaning of emotions. And that was all very well. But then, you know, the storytelling got really boring for me as a kid because it was not as exciting as American stories and American movies. I found a huge difference growing up in terms of, you know, women having stronger roles in America and Western films, and having the ability to talk and say and speak their mind, versus the Indian heroine actress who wanted to say something but would have to do something else, who felt a certain emotion but had to hide that emotion because it was always family first. So that kind of storytelling really wasn't working for me. You know, an Indian girl growing up in a British school, sort of think of Bend It Like Beckham, but without the soccer. You know, you're going to migrate toward the storytelling which works for you. So I was always geared more toward American movies, American stories. And then suddenly I started watching, and there was this actor who caught my attention. And, you know, I didn't know who he was. And I got engaged to my husband at the time, must have been in my early 20s, of course. That's when I started paying attention to films, because this actor just caught my attention on screen. And it wasn't because of the dialogues he was scripted, or the, you know, the singing and dancing, which I've been watching for Never Never, but it was his ability to convey emotions and act on screen without even saying a word. His expression, his talking, his ability to talk through his eyes. His eyes are so powerful. They say
they
everything
are.
without
They
saying
are.
nothing. And one of the movies you talked about before, Rab Ne Bana Di Jodi,
Oh,
which,
that's my favorite.
yep,
Favorite.
that's one of my favorites too. There's an entire scene where he has a monologue in a salon, and he's
Oh,
talking
that's
to
my
himself.
favorite scene because I'm a hairdresser, and that scene is so precious where and the guy passes out and he's talking to himself. It is the most precious thing I've ever seen in my life. And he is so comfortable in his own skin that he is
Yes.
fearless when it comes to portraying a role. But that's my favorite scene in it. And then my other favorite scene is when he's in the bedroom and he's fantasizing about being a superhero and doing all this crazy. And I have the soundtrack that I play in the car, and every time it gets to that one violin type music where he stands on the desk and he's furling this cape, I cry every single time just hearing the music from that film. And there's so many of his films, I love them, but when I watch them, I cry so hard. It's hard. It's hard to cope. I don't know. He makes you have feelings. You know what it is? It's you're able to get out all these feelings that have been pent up inside for so long, but he does have immense control over his reactions. He has a poker face.
Mhm.
And when that one woman was interviewing him, my mouth was hanging open. She was so mean. Well, what are you going to do about it? And he goes, well, I really do need to do something more about it. And by the time he was done, he goes, thank you for the honor and privilege. And he kissed her hand. And she was like, I could see her changing before my eyes, to maybe, people get ideas in their head out how people are supposed to be. I would love to meet him because I would love to see what he's really like in person because I don't know him. I have no idea. I just know and I can tell you from the little bit of television that I've done, and I had my own little talk show for a while and everything. When you're on screen and you're on screen, you behave a certain way. And you talk a certain way. I'm very careful about enunciating my words when I'm on television, and I don't talk like I'm talking right now. I mean, I want to keep this show, the shows that I do on my Kathy L. Murphy channel. I'm just being the little Kansas girl that I've always been. I just want to show my enthusiasm for storytelling through whether we're reading books or watching films or listening to the lyrics of songs, theater. There's a lot of ways, but what is wonderful about him, he's probably one of the greatest actor as far as storytelling I have ever seen. And I've always admired Meryl Streep and Kate Blanchett and Jennifer Lawrence. There's a lot of actors that I just think some actors are just playing themselves. He really takes on a role. I don't know what was the name of the movie where he kills the girl. I have never been so shocked in my life. I had to stop the tape and just go, what just happened? Over the top of the building. And I just thought, and then, he's played a kind of a psychopath and
Bazigar, yeah, when he was a psychopath. I mean, from what I have seen and understood about him, and I've watched Amitabh Bachchan, who's known as the Big B.
I love him too. And I've been watching a lot of his films now. And I just watched The Fame Game with Mathura Dixit.
Oh, Madhuri Dixit, yes.
Oh my gosh, that was such a good film. And
it's a TV series, I'm thinking, is it?
Yeah, but the guy that she's referring to that she was in the first movies with is named Manish something. And the whole time I'm watching it, I think, is that Shah Rukh Khan? Is that supposed to be Shah Rukh Khan? And then the story of the two children. But this was fascinating. I just read everything I can find on all these authors and different things. And luckily I had, I don't know if you got to hear Judith Tittleman, who wrote Guest House for Ganesha, but she's got an interesting story because she's Jewish, but her parents went through the Holocaust, and so the kids were brought up with that weight. I can't even imagine. So they didn't really practice their faith. So she never really practiced her Jewish faith, but she found a big interest in Eastern cultures in India and, all over. She said that's where they like to go. They like to go to, all over in the Far East. And she said, she wrote this book, and she said, I just became fascinated with Ganesha, the elephant god, and she makes this elephant god a character in her book. I've never seen a book written like this in my life. It's one of the best books I picked, I think. I really think that my world has been open the past 2 years. A lot of people think COVID has been, and it has been. I've lost so many good friends. I just lost 3 more not long ago. And
I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's one of the people I lost was my former Sunday school student. It's tragic, but anyway, yeah. And I'm thinking life is short, and if we could just put all of our energies into the things that bring us joy, like Shah Rukh Khan films, I'm his fan forever. Chances of meeting him are nil to nothing, but I would like to see what it's really like over there. I've read books about India for years and never really wanted to go there. But after I started watching the Bollywood films, I thought, I want to see what it's really like there. Because, Bollywood is fantasy. It's not real. And I know that. I mean, I'm smart enough to know that Shah Rukh Khan is really not Raj or Rahul or all those different people. Another film that I love of his is Josh, the one where he plays a kind of in a gang. It's when he was, I think, really first doing the movies. He and that beautiful actress that starred in this film, I can't ever pronounce her, she played his sister. Yeah, I love that movie. And it kind of reminds me of the India version of West Side Story. But every one of his films, I have favorite parts of them. And if I ever got to meet him in person, I tell him his eyes and eyebrows are just the most amazing things, because the way he does his eyes and eyebrows can convey everything.
That's precisely what happened when I was working on the series. I didn't even know that I had been so hugely impacted by Shah Rukh Khan that he wove his way into one of the main leading characters.
I understand that completely. And you know, another thing I like is he never shaved off all his hair like all these guys are doing now, that shaving their head, shaving. He always kept his beautiful hair. And I thought, that's, you know, he bucked the system and he didn't do, I mean, he's had shorter haircuts, which I loved, but I mean, he never shaved. I hate those shaved. I know a lot of guys. I have a
Well,
lot
see,
of
the other
friends.
thing about him as a person is he stayed married to this one woman goalie
Yes.
for so
Yeah.
long, whereas a lot of times in India, as you have in Hollywood, there are breakups, there are divorces, you know, there are tragedies, there are infidelities and all of that, but he's been faithful to this one woman. She's been faithful to him. And that makes him somebody you look up to as well, in
Oh,
terms of
absolutely. And my
not just for the
favorite,
singing and dancing, but actually as a human being.
yeah, that's, I really like him as a human being, because that's what impressed me the most. And the way he is with his children,
Mhm.
he's so, they're so important to him. And I, that's, you know, a father being a father. I know he's gone a lot, but when he was around, he's really in tune. But, you know, here in America, my favorite actors were Jimmy Stewart and, um, you know, my favorite film is To Kill a Mockingbird, which starred Gregory Peck. Those men were married to the same women their whole lives. They were faithful, um, you know, loving family members, and I admire that. And Jason Momoa was another one that I just, and then he had this recent breakup.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they get back together, because I think the way he treated his kids and how much he loved his wife, I hope they work it out, because it was such a, it's a beautiful thing in this world where everybody's just, what's the next best thing? Let's get a younger model, you know. And everybody I know is divorced. I mean, everybody. And so many of my dearest friends are going through it now, and we're of age, you know. I'm 65, and it's not too much fun to go through a divorce in your late 50s, you know. So I I admire that. There's just so many things about him, and the way he's polite. I'm sure that he's just like anybody. We all have flaws. I mean, you know, I think if anybody was to see my lifestyle, I drive them nuts, because I'll get up in the middle of the night and I'll go back to painting or watch a movie or read a book, and I'll be up all night long. And then I might, you know, get up and do what I have to get done. Then I may take a nap. I mean, I have no set routine. I just am kind of I'm ready to get out of the house so bad. But it's been interesting. But I'm hoping that more people will join our club so we can have more shared conversation. But I think the same reasons that you found him. But isn't that wonderful that even though we can be raised in different parts of the world, but through the storytelling and through the films and the books, we become friends. And
Yes.
I'm telling people that I look forward to all of you that I've met from all these different countries joining me, like Antonita and Wander Chang, and you know, Antonita's from Bulgaria. I'm reading her book right now. I can't even imagine what she went through getting over here. And she's such a educated person, but you have to have a lot of drive and will to leave that comfort zone and go places that, you know, I'm so inspired by people who travel and go and do. And I, you know, if I could do one more thing in the last final chapter of my life, it's to do that as much as I can. And dang, this COVID, it's just really messing things
Well, I
up.
think you have many more chapters in your life ahead of you.
Well, I hope so. I hope so, Andrew. And I'm so looking forward to when we actually get these books out of yours and that we can get on the road to talking about those and everything. And you've been on Lovelace Cook's show, haven't you?
Yes, I have. And she was wonderful to talk to. And hearing, off the record, when I heard about her experiences in India as well, it was very interesting because she's coming from a different perspective. She came to India for a different reason. And, it's just inspiring to hear what other people have to say. When I look at, the country I'm from, I'm coming from a different perspective versus a native because I grew up in Hong Kong, though we went back every summer, but I was still a foreigner in my own country, so to speak. And now when I go back to India, whenever the time or opportunity arises, it's a continually changing place. The next generation is coming in. The number of developments, it just surprises you everywhere you go. And things that used to be in a location before, for example, they're not there anymore. Something else has come up. And so those kind of things takes you by surprise, along with the fact that you've now got highways, in Mumbai, we now have this huge highway which crosses over a portion of the ocean, which was never there before. It's called Sea Link, and it's beautiful. It's this beautiful highway, and it just runs across the ocean, the Arabian Sea. And we never had that when I was living there. So all these developments that you see now, and it's continually developing. And the face of India changes. The generation, the designers, the fashion, the colors. What stays the same, of course, I think, from my experience, is the roots. Everybody's roots stays the same, but the layers on top, which we talk about in layers of storytelling as well, they continue to change.
Well, I've noticed in the films that were done, set in the 80s, they wore like American like 80s clothes or 90s clothes. But recently, in a lot of the films I've seen, except for the ones maybe set in America, they always they always wear the saris. And the saris are just beautiful to me. They're the most gorgeous things I've ever seen in my life. I
Mhm.
don't know how practical they are. I can't imagine cleaning house in one.
I used to wear one, and I still do. I mean, when I was newly married, and we were living in a generation of, three generations together. I was wearing a sari all the time, and two safety pins is all I needed to clip it all together. And I got really efficient, so I can drape one on in about 5 minutes, 5 or 7 minutes.
Oh,
That's how good. And of course, it all depends on the fabric. If you're pleating tussar, or whether tussar silk, which is the hardest, or whether it's chiffon, which is the easiest, crepe silk, or another type of fabric. It all depends on the fabric you're pleating and how quickly the pleats align. It just comes with practice. So yeah, I just had to wear one, 2 days ago, and it was like, yeah, 5, 7 minutes, and I was done, two safety pins, and I was out. So it's the accessories which take a little more time.
the bracelets and
Yeah, the bangles, the bindi,
the
the
earrings. They don't really wear earrings in their ears so much. They hook them around their ears, don't
no, they wear them in the ear. They pin them down, but because they're so heavy, so then you need these linking chains, which helps you to wind it around the ear and clip it to your hair, so some of the pressure is off the ear.
Yeah.
So some of the jewelry that I have in my wedding is the earrings are so heavy, I had to have these links built with the actual jewelry piece itself, because the earring is pure gold, and it's got enamel, and it's got diamonds, and it's this, this chandelier earrings, and your ear can only take so much weight.
Oh, I know. I know.
And
I was like the last person in the world to get my ears pierced because my parents thought it was like getting a tattoo. It was just not done in
not
our
done.
family. And I got mine done when I was 17, when I was at my aunt's. And I came home. My parents were furious.
Oh, really?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Furious that I got my ears pierced. And um, one daughter has like 3 piercings. And then my oldest daughter, she just recently got her ears pierced finally because she wanted to wear earrings. It's hard to find clip-ons. So, but it's so funny how things like that have changed through the years. But the jewelry that they have in India is beautiful too. Oh
Yes.
my goodness, it's so pretty. But this is going to be a lot of fun. So next week, not next week, next month for our watching, we're going to watch this film. And I know it's a long film, so I'm going to give everybody
Devdas.
plenty of time to watch it. But I watched it the first time for the story, but the second time I watched it just to that house with the stained glass. Is that a real place or was that a set?
I know that a lot of the set that was designed for Devdas was designed in the studio, in the actual movie studios. And they take the time and the patience to actually put the design of the entire intricate work that is required of the studios together.
My gosh, that house, I just fell in love with the house that had the stain. It was glass, but it had like colored pieces in it. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the carriages and the, you know, just the costumes. And
So this Devdas movie is a remake of the original version.
yeah, I watched the original and I know it's kind of like there's many versions of, It Happened One Night, um, or in A Star Is Born is another one where they've done 3 or 4. But I have to say that I really like this one. It was just so, the colors and the costumes for those dresses and the dances were just out of this world. And my heart, how many movies has he died in? Because it's he dies too. I'm so afraid that if one day, if he ever does die, they'll just show all those scenes from his movies. And I hope I'm long gone before it happens because I'll be a wreck. But I always cry so hard at the end of this movie. It's the saddest thing. And it's
a tragedy. It's a tragedy,
it is a tragedy, but you keep watching it. And just like Om Shanti Om was a tragic story, but I was watching a reviewer talk about it on YouTube, and he said, for some reason, that film is very nostalgic for people, and they love to watch it over and over and over. I go, that's the way I feel about that Jodie film. I've watched that, I bet you 10 times. Every time I get in a really bad mood, I watch it because I love the scene in the barbershop. I love it when Bobby comes to the door and he's kicking it in because he thinks he's gotten married and didn't tell him. And then they show him in the attic bedroom and he's telling the story and Bobby's just crying. And it's one of the most touching men friendship movies too, besides his love for this girl. And I love every movie that she's in. I think my favorite go-to movies are the ones that Anusha Sharma. Yeah, I love all the ones she's done. I love Zero. I love that one. I love the one where he's the tour guide and she's trying to find her engagement ring. Oh my God, I've watched that one I don't know how many times.
And what's special about Rab Ne Bana Di Jodi is it's a contradiction to all the movies, sort of a lot of the movies which are like predecessors, where it's always the woman who is sacrificing and making the greatest sacrifice. But in this movie, you have Shah Rukh Khan, a modern male Indian man, who is making the biggest sacrifice because he's taken her on as his wife in a loveless marriage, but now he has to win her heart. And how do you win her heart when she's in love with somebody else? And so he has sacrificed his entire life, and his mission and goal is just to win her love, which is, a lot of sacrifice, which Indian males by, Bombay masala standards don't usually make.
There's a scene in it where she says, listen, I agreed to be your wife. And she goes, but I can never love you. And so if you don't want to take care of me, that's fine and everything. He goes, it's okay. He goes, I've never even known any woman, let alone, he goes, I'm just happy with what that you're happy. It's just the most touching thing. And we don't see it here either.
Well,
I mean,
that's a very important line you stated, because when, when you say something impactful, like I'm happy with whatever makes you happy or whatever we have, that is the reason why when you go to India and, when you said, when you smile at people, they smile back at you. It's because they have learned and they continue to learn, you, to be happy with what you have, be comfortable in your skin, because the struggles there are endless.
oh, yeah, I
They
know.
really are. When you live there, as I have lived for this, 6 to 8 year time period that I did, not as a visiting or a visitor, but really living there, you see the differences in socioeconomics, the differences in stratas, the differences in how people treat you, when you're coming from wealth and status, whereas when you're coming without that behind you, there's a huge difference.
Well, that's here too. I'm going to tell you that is definitely here too.
Mhm.
Because if people do not think that you have, the first things people ask you is, what do you do for a living? What kind of car do you drive? You
Mhm.
know, where do you live? Who's your family? They do it here too. Um, and it's not safe for us to go everywhere.
Right.
You do get to a certain age where people do start leaving you alone. I'm definitely at that age now. Nobody messes with me now. But when I was a young girl, it was really hard because, I had a teacher one time tell me in school, we wore mini dresses, and I think I weighed 135 pounds. And I came into the class and I made it, I made all my own clothes in school. And he came in, he goes, here's a good example of a girl who needs to stop eating Snicker candy bars. Now, I weighed 135 pounds, and all the football boys, everybody started laughing. And it was so embarrassing.
Mm,
I think I went for like a whole week without eating because the coach, it was a coach, she basically told me I was fat at
mm.
135, and I was 5'8.5". I didn't think I was fat, but it's amazing how those things, and I now you wouldn't say that to any of my daughters or their friends, or they'd come back at them, well, what are you talking about, pork chop? They
Mm, mm.
they let him have it, but I was so embarrassed and I was so introverted when I was younger. But reading, watching films has made me come out of my shell. And I did community theater, and I think that does teach you how to you can carry on without people knowing that you're scared to death. Because most of the time I was
I
frightened.
think that's the beauty of storytelling, whether it's through books, whether it's through movies, whether it's through songs and lyrics. What I've learned is, it doesn't matter what form of storytelling is, but as long as you can find a medium to connect with somebody else and find that you're not alone. Other people do share the same issues and concerns that you have. Um, you're not alone. There is another person out there. Now, you may never meet him or see him, but it's a sense of validation. I think that's what storytelling does.
Yeah, and I tried to raise my kids where they are very strong. They're very, take charge, and they're not bossy, but they're going to stand up for themselves. And my grandson my daughter has him, he knows how to clean, he knows how to do dishes. He's 3. He knows how
Oh,
to cook. He likes it. She makes it so much fun. But he also goes out and helps his dad build things and do the gardening. And I go, oh, thank you, Lainey, because so many of the boys that grew up here in East Texas, they lived with their mama until they got married. And then their wife became their mama.
right.
And all the girls are pushed out of the house to go off and do their own thing, but the boys will stay home until they're in their 40s if they don't get married. And I go, what is this all about? I had a hard time dealing with that at first, but I think the world is changing. It's slow, but it's going to get better, and it certainly has. In the time range that I've been reading India books, I've seen it even change a lot in the last 10 years. I mean, in leaps and bounds in 10 years. So anyway, Uh-oh, your phone's ringing.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to go. But thank you for joining me. And next month, we'll be watching. Yeah, you pronounce it
Devdas.
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 Devdas. Devdas.
There you
Okay.
go.
When you learn how to pronounce it wrong, I was going Devdas, Devdas. And it's so, I know that if I could spend more than, maybe a couple months over there, I could pick it up. But it's hard to, even watching the films, I know what they're saying and I pick up words, but when I say it, I still say it wrong. So I would love to learn how it is. But my friends and I are all starting a Bollywood dance class that a guy from New York who has been teaching all kinds of dance in Dallas for some time at a theater, has bought a theater in Gladewater, Texas. And he said, "Oh, you like Bollywood films?" He goes, "I teach Bollywood dance lessons." I go, "When can I sign up?" So there's a whole group of us that are gonna. So
nice.
we'll be hearing all about it. But he said, I live in the Indian part of Dallas in Plano. There's a huge Indian community and there's all kinds of, so yeah. And lots of people want to learn things for weddings. And I go, "Oh, cool. I'd love to go to an Indian wedding." So one day. So I will go and thank you for joining me. It would have been lonely here all by myself, and hopefully we can get more girls and guys to jump in as we move along. But I'll be putting that up on the calendar of events. It's the same link every time. So we put all the links up on for everything on the website. So if you just go and copy and paste, there you go. So thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday evening, and keep writing and keep sending me all your recommendations, because I just watched a movie called Awaara, AWAAR, and it's a 1951 movie. It was Awada. It was really good, and I wasn't familiar with any of the actors because they're of another generation.
Yes.
But it was sad, but it had a great resolution at the end.
Have you watched Gully Boy?
Gully Boy.
Gully Boy.
Oh, Gully Boy.
With Ranveer Singh.
Who's in it?
Ranveer Singh. That is the next blockbuster movie that I must have seen 3 times already.
Gully Boy. I'll go check it out tonight.
It's an incredible movie. All the stuff that we've been talking about with socioeconomic diversity and struggles and how people learn to find happiness in what they have. Oh my gosh, that movie is mind-blowing. It really is.
I may have seen it. I've watched a lot of movies and I forget the titles, but I will check it out. Did you remember where you watched it? Was it
Netflix? It's there. At least last time I was there.
Oh, well, let's go see if this comes off.
Wash it off. Have fun. Happy Holi.
I know. Happy Holi. Happy Holi. It's so much fun. I will see you next time down the road. Keep writing and keep in touch. Okay? It's all about the story, everybody. Join us the third Sunday at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.